In this video, learn to ask if you're trading, are you really going to crush the market in that trade? Hi, I'm Mike Bellafiore, co-founder of S&B Capital, and we're a proprietary trading firm located in Midtown Manhattan. And I'm also the author of the trading classic, One Good Trade, and the playbook. In this video, a developing trader during an in-depth trade review shares an A-plus breakout trade opportunity in AMD, one of the hottest stocks in the market. But then the developing trader doesn't actually take this trade and instead makes a series of lesser trades in this stock. Let's get to work on sharing this important trading lesson from our prop desk so you can grow your trading account. All right, Jonathan, why don't you give us a little context as to who you are and where you came from?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say my name is Jonathan Fibus. I am a senior intern / developing trader here at S&B Capital. I'm actually a twin brother. My brother is Caleb. We are both from Clearwater, Florida, originally born and raised.
And you're both interning?
Yes, sir.
At the same time?
Yes, sir. Both
here
together.
in New York?
Yes.
So you went through a junior internship?
Yes, sir. I want to say we're there for the junior internship was 8 weeks long.
Okay. And how'd you do in the junior internship?
The junior internship was a lot of, I like to consider it like a shadowing process.
How'd you do?
How did I do? I thought I learned and developed exceptionally well, considering it was a remote.
Well, you're here for a senior internship, right?
So I'm going to go with it was great.
So you did a junior internship, and then you got invited to do now a senior internship.
Yes, sir.
And you guys came up to New York?
Yes, sir. I want to say made the transition. We've always been firm believers that we need to have that in-person opportunity to learn. We like being hands-on, and from the junior internship during the first 8 weeks, we saw a lot of success, saw a lot of hard work and everything, but really ultimately thought we could thrive and succeed in the in-person atmosphere compared to being remotely.
And then before that, how'd you get your junior internship?
So it's actually a little of a funny story there. So actually,
we've got time.
Okay, I'm gonna say I got involved with trading after I graduated college. It was the fall of 2019, and I mean, my brother and I grew up playing baseball our entire lives. Went up to school for baseball, and we've always gone to the gym. So kind of once COVID happened and everything kind of started to settle back down, we started going back to the gym. And one of the girls there, who we ended up just sparking a conversation with, told us that her boyfriend was a day trader, and that automatically piqued my interest. I was like, okay, I'm really curious about this here. So because I wasn't too sure in the world that we're in today if it was more along the lines of him being in a firm or if he was more of like the entrepreneurial individual type of trader. So I started talking to her, and she actually told me that he worked for S&B Capital. And of course, that is one of the most well-known and reputable.
We're everywhere. You can't escape us.
Exactly. I'm saying that's honestly one of the my first introduction to the firm life was actually looking on Instagram as well and seeing S&B Capital. And from there, it's just the algorithm and everything just always popped it back up. So for me, I think it's one of the huge firms that everyone sees, and you can never escape it. So I ended up seeing if we could go out with her and her boyfriend and start talking more about everything, just kind of get tidbits and stuff like that, just for more of the learning education part of it. Because I know in just the atmosphere of trading, you want to be able to always have someone to bounce ideas off of, just kind of learn from others, because I realize that it can be a really lonely world if you're not doing it with others. So we started out going to dinner and stuff like that, and from there, Nano, the other trader, at the time he was I think he was around here for about a year and a half at that point. And so he said, I can put in a good word. He said, how serious are you and your brother about this? And I said, it's something that we've kind of dreamed about, or I've dreamed about a little bit longer than my brother has, but it's something that we know as of late, it's something that we really wanted to focus on, really wanted to pursue. And I know with our background, our hard work, dedication, I was like, we're for it. I know we can put in the effort. We don't care. We're willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. And that's kind of how we got introduced. We went through the interview process. It took about, I think, 4 or 5 months. And then from there, got the notification that we were going to be doing the junior internship remotely. And so started that in the summer, I believe.
So moral of the story is hit the gym.
I would
Hit
say
the gym and be nice to young ladies who happen to have boyfriends who work at S&B.
so. In the grand scheme, yes. However, I think it's just kind of. I mean, I like being nice to everybody, no matter what. I think it's just. I'm all about the morals and kind of the self-respect. I believe whatever foot you put forward, you should be able to get in return. So it's always just be kind to others, and to. Basically, I like staying active, so of course you got to have that balance between the mental clarity and the physical clarity, so just a combination of everything.
What do you deadlift?
Deadlift, I maxed in college 395.
Pretty good.
So, and I'm 5'4",
Pretty good.
155 pounds.
Pretty good. All right, well, let's see what we got here.
So this is actually a trade that I took recently on AMD. It was in anticipation of an all-time high break, and it was actually the day after their earnings report came out. So the thesis behind the trade, basically when you're at these all-time high levels, it's kind of considered uncharted territory, just because price has not been above these levels in the past. So it's kind of, for momentum traders, something that I look for just for kind of continued momentum past these levels. And normally you wouldn't see any kind of previous orders in to basically kind of stall or stop the stock at these levels. It's just usually you like seeing a lot of momentum through these kind of all-time high levels and for anticipation of moves higher. So the parameters for my trade, when I generally look for all-time high breaks, I like looking for the average 20-day volume of something at least over 1 million shares done per day. And that's just because it provides liquidity. Because the last thing you want to do is be stuck in a trade where you're having to deal with the after-hours movement or pre-market movements. To me, I like being in and out quick. I like kind of dealing with the overall liquidity. So that's kind of stuff that I like looking for to begin with. And one of the main things that I look for is being within an ATR range of that all-time high level. Just because of the fact if you're within that range, you can normally go under the assumption that once you break that level, the all-time high level, you're going to continue higher, and you're within the normal kind of average range over the last however you have it designated for the ATR range for the movement. However, in this certain situation, we were within 2 ATRs, and because there was an earnings catalyst kind of paired with this, I was expecting range expansion just due to the earnings and the involved or the anticipated price action. So for me, that's where I kind of go ahead and will expand out a little bit and say I'm okay with looking for an all-time high trade, kind of within a 2 ATR range, only if there's earnings involved. Otherwise, it's going to be within 1 ATR movement. For entries, it is very dependent on the price action and the opening bell. Obviously, we can go ahead and set our kind of what we're looking at, our key levels, and our potential areas of execution based on the pre-market price action. However, up to the morning bell, everything can kind of change. So that's one thing that I always do is just kind of look up to the opening bell and see where exactly I'm looking for entries. And then stops, one thing I like to do, since I primarily like to scalp. So for me, it's basically either the pre-market low or basically a larger time frame support or psychological number. In the case of this trade, it was actually 120 was my ultimate stop, and the pre-market low was 120.80. Reasons to sell. So because it's a momentum type of trade, whenever I start to see the stock, whether it's just on the tape or just at key levels, if it starts to stop or start to stall, that's when I'm willing to start take profits. Just because to me at that point in the short time frame, the momentum's starting to kind of fade, and that's where I ultimately want to see myself get out. Or just overall momentum slowing down in general. And then also, I like, because it's a momentum trade, I also like taking exits with strong momentum on my side. And it's usually when we're starting to get to the ATR move, either from the open or the low. Just kind of one way to have a measured move to kind of just set the parameters.
If you want to learn 3 real-world setups that our traders use, including the simple setup that we teach all of our new traders and the setup that turned one of our traders into a 7-figure big money earner, check out the free webinar that we're currently running. Just go ahead and click the link that should be appearing right now at the top right-hand corner of your screen. That's going to open up this free registration page in the new window. So don't worry, you're not going to lose this video. You're going to learn more in a couple of hours from this trading workshop than from years of online education.
So this was the actual fundamental kind of spreadsheet from the earnings report. So as you can see, or just in general, the shares, the float basically for AMD is 1.21 billion. The short float is actually 5.73%. And then as you can see here, the average 20-day volume was 44.3 million shares traded per day, and the ATR range was 3.5. With the actual earnings report, so the expected earnings was 0.61 EPS, and then revenue was 4.11 billion. And then what was actually reported was 0.73 and then 4.31 billion. So you can see that we had basically a 20% increase in beat in EPS, and then also a revenue beat as well of 4.87%.
Yikes, those are good earnings.
So, and not only that, but they also raised the full year guidance, and then also their quarter four projections, basically or the forecast.
Yeah, those are the ones on earnings that get me most excited, is when they give you clarity for the full year, as opposed to 1 quarter or 2 quarters. But to say, hey, we're raising full year revenue guidance, that's, or if somebody said they were decreasing full year revenue guidance, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of information to be trading on. Those are the ones that I like the most for earnings plays. 2 things to add to this would be institutional ownership. Okay. And secondly, what is the VIX trading at, and keeping track of that with your playbook trades. Okay. So what the VIX is trading at overall is certainly going to matter in a market stock like this.
Okay, absolutely. And I was going to say, not only, but also touching on that subject as well, being that AMD is also in the semiconductor sector, their earnings report, from what I saw, didn't mention anything about how there's the chip shortage or anything like that. They were actually talking about increasing and ramping up production in order for the holidays, and just overall, to me, it was just overall bullish. I didn't see any kind of negative sentiment from the earnings report. So just based on everything that I was seeing, it to me looked like there should be no reason why we should be kind of selling off this earnings report. So I just had that ultimate bullish sentiment with the kind of the parameters of the trade of being around this all-time high level as well.
Yeah, and the best framework, the best mindset for that is, wow, this really should go up. I expect this to be strong for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then let me observe what's actually happening.
So one thing that I have mapped up here is just kind of the daily time frame. So as you can see from the last earnings report from the last quarter, we had a run up after the report and ultimately created all-time highs at 122.5. And really since then, we pulled in a little bit, but started trading within like a 10-point range for generally the last couple months. And as you can see, we started kind of breaking up over the last week or two, and started to contest these all-time high levels. So what I have mapped up here, I have the original all-time high, which was 122.5, and 2 days prior to this trade, you can see that we start to kind of break that all-time high, but not really kind of go much higher. So, and we ended up closing right around that 122.5 area. So just mapping out the all-time highs that were created. And then ultimately on the day of the earnings report coming out, we had a large move as well, but they were just basically wicks, or either large or small wicks that were created. But to me, I was still looking at these areas just because to me these were the previous all-time highs that either we closed above or were created. So these were kind of my key levels that I was looking at on the daily time frame. And then this is actually the pre-market movement. It's the post-market and the pre-market movement from when the earnings report was released, and it's on the 3-minute time frame. So to me, when I first actually woke up and started doing the research and then started seeing everything kind of mapped out, it looked like the report and the sentiment was just kind of a bunch of consolidation. There wasn't really, in my mind, one way or another where it was actually going at the moment. And then as you can see, when I started to look back more towards the open of the market, we started selling off on the areas that I was currently looking at. So one of the key areas that I was looking at pre-market before we actually sold off was 122, just because it was an area that was just pre-market and post-market support and just an inflection area. And then right when we actually sold off around 9 a.m. or so and started the base, it was 120 spot 8. So the areas that I had mapped out originally before the sell-off happened was if we were continuing to push higher around the 122 spot 5 area, I would like to see a flush down into 122 for a beginning buying point. But as you can see, that kind of sentiment started to disappear as we started to push these areas earlier in the morning before the open. So I just had to kind of change my levels, still keep some and still add new ones, and just kind of go from there. But the overall sentiment was we started consolidating and selling off, and then looking back at the daily, in my mind, this was about a 20-point run-up in a matter of probably two trading weeks, which is relatively quick in my mind. So even though the report was strong, we're at these all-time high levels, we started to see a little bit of a pull-in the post and pre-market. That was fine with me just because of the fact that my overall larger time frame bias is we're starting to push up, have market support. However, we are looking pretty vertical at the moment without really having any kind of consolidation. So I was okay with that pull-in earlier in the morning.
That's a really good observation. So one of the things you want to continue to do as you look at something that has just had earnings is, hey, what did it do just recently coming into the earnings report? And if it's been steep into the earnings report, if it's gone up a lot right before the earnings report, yeah, that is going to make it more likely that it pulls in at a certain point during the day, or maybe doesn't go up as much during the day, but that matters. Time matters. It's fine for something to go find a higher price, but it's hard to sustain higher prices if time is not long enough. As you said, if there isn't that consolidation. Encourage you to keep doing that. Keep looking at where it came from right before earnings.
So this is actually the 1-minute chart off the open. So I still have my levels kind of prepared at the moment. I'm looking at the 3 kind of all-time high levels that were created. The main one that I really have focus on is that 122 spot 5 area, just because of the fact that that was the one that was created from the previous earnings or after earnings run up. We actually closed right around this two prior days before this trade. And it was just, to me, that was just the level that I really saw value in. So that's the one thing that I started looking at. The other 2 were just kind of mapped out as potential areas just to kind of focus on, but not really just leave out. And then obviously the pre-market is level as well, the one pre-market low, sorry, the 120 spot 80. So then here I actually have my executions from the day. One thing that I really like doing is being able to get the lower prices. I like looking for the opening flush down for most of the stocks that I'm bullish on, just because it's just better pricing overall and kind of gives you the time to kind of just react over the first few minutes of seeing what exactly is going on. So for me, I got into just a feeler size, 30% of the size that I was looking for, around 121 spot 5. And then my plan originally was, because of the pre-market low being at 120 spot 8 and then my ultimate stop being down there at 120, I was okay buying these opening flush moves with a hard stop of 120. Because eventually in my mind, if we're below the pre-market low and we're just kind of below an area where I think we're kind of too far away from an ATR.
You mean that pull-in?
I'm sorry?
Around a little bit after 10 o'clock, that pull-in?
No, so I have the execution off the open.
So the opening drive?
Yes, just the opening drive. So to me, I like looking for the opening drive moves to begin with, and that's where I start going ahead and buying usually the first couple minutes the flushes off the open towards the downside. So basically, I ended up doing that, but as you can see, we caught momentum at 9:31. Basically, I believe it was about $1.50 move in relatively a minute. So to me, this is kind of signaling prices are not going down further. You're not going to be able to get the clear price action or size that you're going to want. So to me, I started looking at areas of where I could buy for the momentum side. So as you can see, I have the momentum size added at 931, which was 122.78. I originally was looking for the 122.5, which was that original all-time high level, just that main area that I was focusing on. And by the time I just hit the bid and ended up joining them real quick, I ended up getting filled at 122.78. So, but this was only 2/3 of the size that I was anticipating. The exits that I was looking for off the opening drive, like I said, my reasons to sell are usually momentum starting to kind of stall out, or once we kind of get to these ATR ranges or these key levels. So I know it's not shown on here, but I think it's actually on the 1-minute chart. My first sells were right around the 124.5 area, and that was basically a 2-day VWAP, and it was almost right around that ATR range of 3.5, give or take, from the lows. So to me, it was kind of where I was okay to take initial size off and then kind of evaluate and see what happens there. And the one thing that I didn't necessarily like was once we got up to that 125, it looked like that we started stalling out a little bit. So that was when I was okay to kind of clear the remaining size just for the quick opening drive move and basically catch right around a 2.5 point move overall in the trade. Later on, I actually did try to anticipate this as being a trend trade. And as you can see, I started to buy right around as we started pulling in towards VWAP and then towards 124.5 as well, which was where I had some of my original exits. And then from there, once we started pushing down, ultimately just got rid of the size for those. And then because my overall thesis was still kind of intact with all of this, I ended up buying the lows again later on around the 10:30 mark, and then just kind of taking it for a scalp.
So look, I'm fine with you making opening drive plays. I think they teach you how to scalp. I think they teach you how to momentum trade. I think they teach you how to momentum intraday trade. I think that's perfectly fine at the start of your career. I think there's a part to the start of your career where you got to learn how to trade. And scalping and momentum trading really does teach you how to trade. You know, how do you trade the order flow? And you're giving yourself some edge to trading this order flow because you've got a good technical setup behind you, and you've got a good news catalyst behind you. So I think that's fine. I think it's really good practice for just trading. So, you know, if we were playing basketball, there's nothing wrong with just shooting.
Of course.
You know, just there's nothing wrong with working on your shooting, become a better shooter. And to me, this is like you're just working on your shooting. The question I want you to think about as you do your after-action review or your after-action report is, you know, is there a trade where I can make a lot of money? So in this setup, is there a place where I can make a lot of money? Like you did a lot of the playing,
Of course.
you did a lot of the trading long, in, out, and that's all fine. You know, but is there a real trade? Is there a trade where you can make a lot of money? And you know, when you're a little bit more experienced, you can trade with a little bit more size. You could have more clarity on what your exit is, and you know, give this a run for a trade for hours, or a trade for to the end of the day, or a trade for maybe even 2 days. And there is a trade in here worth considering, and that is after it sells off too much, after 10 o'clock, and starts to turn around. You know, that is a trade to be thinking about. Can I turn that into an intraday swing trade or a swing trade? You were right and very savvy to point out, hey, this thing's kind of gone up too much before earnings, and then what happens right after the bell at 9:30? It shoots up, and you know, then it pulls in, and I think a lot of people are saying, oh, look how much it pulled in and pulled down to like almost where to open from. This must be weak. You know, no. You know, as you mentioned, it was up a lot before the earnings report. It was super steep when we first opened. Oh, but Bella, it's below VWAP. Well, VWAP's too high because it was so steep right on the open. And you know, you're in a hot sector So you're in a hot sector, and we've got a great earnings report, and this is an earnings report that really can make the stock move for 1, 2, 3 days. And so I think there is something to think about for a swing trade, whether it works or not. I do think there's a real trade in here, there's a big money trade in here, there's something to make a lot of money on, and for this trade, it's after it pulls in too much, it starts to stabilize and starts to go back up, and trading it against perhaps the open, or perhaps it's a pre-market, the bottom of the open, or perhaps a pre-market level that you thought was particularly powerful, and start to swing it. So there's opening drive plays, opening drive plays, opening drive plays, and then a little bit after 10 o'clock, there's a swing trade to be thinking about. And a good thing to be thinking about is, where does it stop going down? Can I trade against that? Where does the momentum start going up? After that overextension to the downside, that's too much. Around that 10-15 area, 10-10 area, 10-15. Where does it start to go to start going back up? That's another way to think about getting back in there. All right, so there's value buying. It's not going anymore. It's not going lower anymore. And then there's the momentum changes to the upside. Those are two really good ways to get back into this trade. And then as you get more experience, you can trade that perhaps with calls. You can trade that with stock. Have a clear stop. Give it a run. I want you to be thinking about that as well.
And that's the one thing that I kind of take away from a lot of this is I've always been kind of a quick-paced kind of trader, and that's where I'm trying to learn and develop on allowing myself to get the bigger move, to look at the bigger picture and kind of stay focused on that and kind of build into or position trade to the point where I can actually catch the full move and not these micro moves just based on being in and out within a couple of minutes here and there. So for me, that's one area that I'm kind of starting to try or learn and develop from and into as well.
Good. One other thing, super important to understand that this is different because it has earnings, as opposed to it's just a technical catalyst. So this is it's at its highs, it's a technical catalyst plus a news catalyst. And it's not just a news catalyst, it's a really good news catalyst.
Of course.
And it's not just a really good news catalyst, it's in a really hot sector. So that makes it even more attractive to give it a run and try and make a swing trade in this. And again, perfectly fine to be making the opening drive plays, to just be playing, to learn, to work on your trading skills. All right, go ahead.
Gotcha. And I would say, yes, that's where I am. That's actually one of the focuses, or I guess we'll go with the previous day's actions first. So the 2 previous days before this trade was actually made, you can kind of see both of these days they had large kind of moves in one direction, and then ultimately reverted all the way back, almost giving up the entire move and going from there. So that's where I think on the second execution that I had regarding the trend trade that I was trying to kind of execute, I should have been able to maybe just anticipate the fact that, okay, over the last 2 previous days, this stock has really been pretty volatile in the opening within the first 30 minutes of the market open. So that's where I maybe should have said, let me just give it more time. Let me just see what happens here before. Because I think the second trade for the anticipation of the trend trade, I ended up getting in normal size, which I think ultimately should have been half or quarter size, just because of the fact of the previous 2 days kind of sentiment on the overall stock. And then the improvements, that's kind of the one thing I was talking about. We'll start off with kind of keeping the larger picture trade in mind. For me, like I said, I've always been kind of very short with everything and very quick. So that's where I feel like I start to get tunnel vision and kind of just react off what I'm seeing on the shorter time frame, where I need to keep the bigger picture in mind. Like you were saying, how not only were we at a technical all-time high level, not only did we have a catalyst coming in, but a very good catalyst coming in a strong sector. To me, seeing everything in the bigger picture, there are so many things lining up to really give you that kind of conviction and that kind assumption that you can really see a big move here. And I think I was just too focused on making the normal quick scalps that I normally take, and that's just me just basically being tunnel vision. And I need to kind of step out, take a step back, and kind of look at everything from the bigger picture, and maybe change my plan and sizing according to that. And then off the open for the momentum drives that I was taking, if full size isn't obtained because I only got 2/3 out of the 3 that I was looking for, I can also allow larger moves in the stock as my risk as well. I think that's one thing that Jeff actually mentioned last week in one of the playbooks, just because of the fact that the 2 ways that you can have the risk is increasing size with shorter, or you can as well. If you're trying to get into trades and you're not able to get the prices you want or the size you want, you can kind of adjust the risk that way by being able to allow a larger move ultimately in the other direction, just to kind of give the stock more time and more room to play with. And then lastly as well, just don't forget the price action over the last couple days. And with basically earnings coming up and being around this time, expect range expansion and larger pullbacks. Because like I said, during that second trade of trying to anticipate a trend trade, I ended up giving away a little bit of profits that I probably shouldn't have. And that's just because of the fact, again, I was just tunnel focused and not really looking how the stock was moving over the last couple days, anticipating the fact that there could have been larger pullbacks. And then if I do, it's gonna have to be on smaller size than what it was.
All right, good. So. Go back a slide. Also, to me, I would go back and I'd want to watch the tape from about 10 o'clock to 10:15, and I'd want to see, I think it's 10:15, and if I'm wrong, it's just because I can't see that far. But the move down, the stopping of the move down, and then the momentum back to the upside. You see that big green candle there? As we start to break out back up to the upside around 10:15?
Yes, I believe so.
I want to go back and watch the tape. I want you to be recording your screens. I would want you to go back and watch your tape right there and see if you can notice why the stock stopped going down from that move from 10 o'clock. Can you see from the tape, from the level 2, that you could see value buying on the tape, support on the tape that wasn't allowing the stock to push lower? Can you see that? Can you decipher that on the tape? I want to go back and watch that and see if I can build some skills to see that. And then I want to see that green candle to the upside again and get in my head, in my developing trader brain, what it looks like when the momentum goes from down back to up again. Because I want to internalize what that looks like. So for the next time, I'll know when it's turning around again.
And I was going to say the last thing that I would like to add to, one thing that I was looking at earlier in the morning, just again off the opening drive, was the R vol for the stock. Yep. And if I'm not mistaken, off the open, we were, of course, we're going to be elevated with earnings and everything. Yep. But the one thing that kind of stuck in my mind was off the opening drive, the R vol was actually increasing. One thing that I've noticed over kind of the first at least couple minutes into the first half an hour, you really will start to see the R vol basically start at a high number and then start to decrease, where AMD, at least within the first couple minutes, R vol was actually increasing. So to me, that's where I kind of had the mindset within my opening drive plays. However, looking at the 10 a.m. mark, that's when I started to get a little hesitant because of the fact that R vol was starting to decrease. But that's just something to kind of, again, need to look at the bigger picture and the larger picture and kind of evaluate the trade that way compared to how I would off the open.
Hey, go ahead and click our subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos that we're producing for you in the trading community. And please take the time to add your feedback in the comments section for what videos you'd like for us to produce next and what you found helpful from this video. From all of us at S&B, train and trade well.